Welcome to the most serious podcast. And today we have Geet from Jab We Met. Is that correct, Geet? Welcome to the most serious podcast.
Thank you so much, Ripudaman. It's so exciting to be here talking to you.
I'm pretty sure you've seen Jab We Met.
Of course, I love that.
I think. Do you think that you are the Keith if Kareena Kapoor stayed at that monastery? She goes to some place in Shimla, right? She goes to a school or something when she's somewhat of more spiritually inclined. Do you relate to that bit?
So I think if you add more wisdom to that Geet character, so yeah, because I am really madly in love with myself, and I've really worked hard to get here. I mean, I wasn't born with that kind of self love. So yeah, add a bit of dash of wisdom to it, and I think I'm there.
Where did it all start? Like when you say and I think I really like the sentence that you just said, that you weren't born with this amount of self-love for yourself, which I think most of us is the case with most of us, but we never acknowledge or even give importance to this fact. Like I've come across a million articles or posts on Instagram or multiple websites which talk about self-love and self-acceptance and care, but for some reason we don't consider ourselves to be that important, and we don't care enough about ourselves, or we don't know how to. So where did it all start for you?
So for me, just like most of the youngsters, there were things going on in my childhood which made me have self-doubt, self-esteem. Looks are so important for girls growing up, and I'm sure, of course, for guys as well. And a lot of things about how you fit into different places, peer groups. So a lot of that is why I had my own challenges. Then comparisons between siblings. I have a sister who's extremely beautiful, and I was not fair skinned and all of that. So how our society is, so from that I think all of that started for me, and I had to really work hard to be able to start liking myself first. Loving comes, you look at different people, you look at friends, you want to be like this person, you want to be with like that popular girl or be like them. So in that process we don't realize we keep going more and more away from ourselves, just by trying to copy others, just by trying to fake confidence and pretend to be confidence. That's like, we're moving more away from ourselves. And but I had no clue. I just wanted to be happy. I just wanted to be confident, but I did not know how. And at that time, we didn't have social media access so easily कि जाओ एक आर्टिकल पढ़ लो, and there was nothing. I had to really search hard. How do I become happier? I was a very negative kid, like in my mind, very negative chatter, self criticism, and perfectionism की तरफ बहुत अपने आप को पुश करना. पढ़ाई को लेके I was very competitive and very pushy towards myself. And we don't realize, in Indian culture we normalize that so much कि बच्चों को पुश करते रहो, अरे तुम्हें तो टॉप करना ही है, टॉप करना ही है. But it takes a massive toll on them without realizing how much pressure that it adds to their young self when they're finding out who they are, and that takes up most of their energy. So that's what happened with me, and that's the reason I went into all of this inner work, because I realized मैंने वो सब करके देख लिया कि वो pretending to be confident or trying to talk in a certain way, walk in a certain way, but all of that, dress up in a certain way, look a certain way. But I realized वो सब बाहर बाहर से हो रहा था, अंदर से तो I was still feeling the same. अंदर से तो वो चीज अभी भी खुशी नहीं आ रही थी. So that's when I started coming across these things like self-help books. I remember my first book was, I think, when I was 12 or 13, How to Be Happy. वो एकदम एकदम बेसिक सी बुक होती है ना जो बच्चों वाली. It was like that, and I had made notes in it, and all of that. And then went for art of living, and then Buddhism, and so that's how my journey started to like accept myself, because उसके बिना कुछ मजा नहीं है लाइफ में जब तक खुद को आप एक्सेप्ट नहीं कर पाते.
On very similar lines, I think there's this author that I absolutely love called Jordan Peterson, and I saw one of his clips, which he was talking about, if you really want to start understanding your life, if you really want to become more honest with your life, the first thing that you have to do is just sit on your bed and ask yourself an honest question of what are a couple or even one absolutely stupid or foolish thing that I know that I'm doing, that I know that is in my control, that I could stop, that I want to stop, and honestly answering that question like a responsible person for yourself. I think that moment of reckoning, of willing to accept who you are or willing to accept your challenges, embracing them, is probably the first step that we all run very far away from, because of possibly what we fear that might come up. Do you think
Mm.
that's the case?
I feel there are two types of people. One type is exactly how you described. They are constantly avoiding self introspection or avoiding facing things about themselves that might not be true. And then there is the other kind who is constantly self criticizing, doubting. So I feel, there are these two types of people, and different things work for different people. For these people, you need them to feel more kind towards themselves and look at more amazing things about themselves, because they're always focused on what's not good about them. And then there's this other category of people who are just constantly thinking about and pretending that everything's great and not being able to face their shortcomings or limitations. सो दोनों टाइप के लोग जब आगे लाइफ में जाएंगे, रिलेशनशिप्स में घुसेंगे, यूनिक काइंड ऑफ प्रॉब्लम्स क्रिएट होंगे.
Yeah.
So that's
And
how I.
what creates this distinction between these two kinds of people? Are people born this way, or is it their childhood experiences? Is it something that some do right or some do wrong, or is it just a natural way of how people grow up?
So I think to some extent we do have a unique set of nature that we are born with. I do feel that has some extent relevance, and then of course how we go on to perceive our environment, what kind of conditioning we are receiving. But it to a great extent does have to do with our own inner world with which we were born. Whether you call it genetically how we've been passed on, or if you believe in lifetimes, so different things, different karmic patterns, how they're intertwining and coming into a life. Because we see so many times two children are born, let's say twins are born.
Yeah.
Okay. Now the conditioning and the environment is almost same for them. But now each of them will perceive both the environments differently, the same environment differently. So that somewhere tells us that there is a bit of a different lens that they're looking at the world through, and they own have their own gifts and their abilities. And then of course to a great extent how the parenting happens, opportunities, that makes a lot of difference. But there's some relevance to the way you are born with different traits also.
I think on similar lines on what you just said, I've always wondered a lot about this word called empathy and kindness, and I think we, as a person who probably has heard this word a lot, but for me the understanding of this word is always external, like empathize with someone around you, empathize with your environment, or be kind to people around you. But I've never, maybe possibly now I've started thinking about it, but you never are taught how to be kind to yourself, or empathize with yourself, think of yourself as a person who you might care about, or who is worth caring about.
Yeah.
And do you think that that is a wrong way on how we approach this? Like, possibly should we start talking about these things from an earlier age when kids are in school and we start teaching them all of this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are they even capable enough to understand all this? I think that's a bigger question to ask.
I feel for a kid, rather than teaching them, it has to be modeled to them.
Hmm.
Kids will learn how they see their parents behaving. If a parent has empathy, and so the kid is a sponge, they
Hmm.
are they don't need to logically understand things. They are absorbing everything. So the more they see in their awareness, okay, that let's say my mother, she thinks about others what others' feelings are, how other person and speaks accordingly, then the child will automatically start absorbing that or mirroring that behavior. And as you said, empathy for somebody else cannot happen until unless you have some kind of empathy for yourself. There is some kind of awareness about your own inner self. Till that is not there, see, most of the people are faking it.
Okay. What do you
you know
mean by that?
you've seen people pleasers.
Yeah.
So you can feel something is off about them.
Hmm.
There's not that authenticity is missing. So a lot of people are just good at pretending to be empathetic, but real empathy comes if you've been empathetic to yourself first. If you are kind to yourself first, if you've understood your inner world first, that's when you can really be empathetic towards others. Otherwise, if you notice, we are empathetic when it suits us. Then, when we need something from somebody, how much ever indirect, then we will be very thoughtful. Oh my God, like, how can I help you? This is with someone. Then, so it all depends. We are selfish human beings. If you must have seen Friends, may there's this episode where Joey says, there's no selfless act, there's no selfless deed. And that is somewhere true. Everything does come from somewhere. So वो अपने आप को सोचना ना महान बनना कि अरे देखो मैं कितना लोगों के लिए करता हूँ, that's rubbish. We're always getting some kind of validation और कुछ हमें मिल रहा है. So empathy सबसे पहले खुद से start होती है, तो फिर दूसरों की तरफ automatically flow पाती है.
This is probably the plot of Breaking Bad. Have you seen Breaking Bad?
Little bit. I didn't go.
Oh no, then I don't want to spoil it for you. I'll probably keep this story for another episode. But the bigger question that I want to ask is like, why does it take people time to learn this? If this makes life so better, and you said in your personal anecdote that growing up you struggled with self-image and perception of people around you, and most of us do still. What is stopping us from getting from where we are at to where you are at? Why are we not in our own way?
सबसे पहले चाइल्डहुड में जो एक सबसे इम्पॉर्टेंट चीज़ है जो आई थिंक नोबडी इज डूइंग एंड एज पेरेंट्स इट इज सो हेल्पफुल इफ पेरेंट्स और टीचर्स कैन डू दिस इज focus the child's attention on self discovery rather than setting outside goals for the child. अरे तुम्हें फर्स्ट आना है, अरे तुम्हें उसके जैसा बनना है, अरे तुम्हें उसकी तरह एक्सेल करना है. वी आर ऑलवेज गिविंग एक्सटर्नल गोल्स और एक्सटर्नल रोल मॉडल्स. अब उस पूरे प्रोसेस में एज आई सेड इन द बिगिनिंग हम अपने आप से दूर होते जा रहे हैं. आप क्या एक यूनिक चीज हो, आपके अंदर जो यूनिक पर्सनैलिटी है, गिफ्ट्स हैं, टैलेंट्स हैं, एबिलिटीज हैं, उससे आप दूर होते जा रहे हो, होते जा रहे हो. अब मे बी आपके अंदर जो चीजें हैं वो बाहर की दुनिया नहीं मिरर कर रही है और या आपके पेरेंट्स को वो रोल मॉडल्स नहीं दिखते हैं, तो आप अपने आप से दूर हो गए ना. तो आपको यही सब करना पड़ेगा, आपको प्रिटेंड करना पड़ेगा कॉन्फिडेंट होने के लिए, आपको दुनिया जैसे आपको एक्सपेक्ट करती है वैसे अपने आप को मोल्ड करना पड़ेगा. तो यू लूज कनेक्शन विद योर सेल्फ. दैट्स लैक ऑफ सेल्फ लव. अगर हम शुरू से ही सेल्फ डिस्कवरी पे फोकस करें ना कि मुझे क्या पसंद है, लाइक व्हाट आर द थिंग्स दैट आई एम गुड एट, व्हाट आर द थिंग्स दैट मेक मी कम अलाइव. मतलब अपनी सारी जो चीजें हैं उनको एक गिफ्ट की तरह नोटिस करना, rather than कि अगर एक बच्चा शरारती है तो उसको बहुत गलत और रेप्रिमांड किया जाता है. स्कूल्स कितना मतलब अगर सिर्फ बच्चा पढ़ाई में अच्छा है तो उसको बहुत करेंगे और जो नहीं है उसको पुट डाउन करेंगे. So that is absolutely wrong. We need systems which actually look at the unique personalities and gifts in every child. वो अगर पहले से ही blossom होने लग गया, अगर उसको हमने encourage करना शुरू कर दिया, then everyone will be so confident and so bindas ki, like this. I don't care. I don't need to be like somebody else because I am amazing. That's all we need, to realize that कि मैं exactly जैसा हूँ. मैं पढ़ाई में कम हूँ, इसमें कम हूँ, मेरे को अपनी यूनिक चीज अभी तक अगर नहीं भी मिली है बट मैं तब भी अमेजिंग हूँ. सो दैट्स फॉर अस टू फाइंड आउट कि मेरे में वो क्या चीज है जो मेक्स मी ब्लॉसम.
I remember this conversation that I was having on the podcast only with Chetna Vashisht, and she talked about a very interesting concept of how we over optimize for specific skills sometimes, and we feel that जैसे आपने भी बोला कि अगर कोई सिर्फ पढ़ाई में अच्छा है, let's say, then we put them probably on a pedestal, or one particular function of life, and we feel so overjoyed. But actually in life there, and she was talking about it, that there come multiple moments in your life where if you have a unique set of skills, which probably is, let's say, how to play football, and you also know how to play the guitar, or you are slightly good interested in possibly writing a book on gardening or something like that, then you might find an opportunity which requires that blend of different skills coming right together for you, which any other person, however hard they might try, might never have it, because their curiosities or their interests never led them to develop that stack, which is very different. So if you just particularly keep yourself focused on one goal, one end state, then you lose out on, similarly how Mark Twain said, Mark Twain, I think that's his quote, that if you decide what you want to become in life, that's your punishment, because that's all you'll be.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we really, we, like you said, watering all the different plants that want to grow within us, and then see what unique garden we are, and that garden nobody else can be. जो हमारा यूनिक एक निकल के आएगा, निखर के आएगा, दैट नोबडी कैन बी. और उसके लिए थोड़ी पेशेंस चाहिए, जो आई थिंक हो जाती है फॉर पीपल, टू बी एबल टू allow that to blossom. Parents need to have a lot of patience, trust, confidence. बट वो साइकिल चला रहा है, बिकॉज उनकी चीज़ें पेरेंट्स की सक्सेसफुल नहीं रही, वो अपने आप में इनकम्प्लीट है, तो वो बच्चे में वो अपना हेसन करने की कोशिश करते हैं कि अरे तुम तो बढ़ो, तुम तो अच्छा कुछ करो, तुम तो करो. सो इट्स देयर ओन incompletions that are getting coming as pressure here. So we can break that cycle. If one set of generation we can be more aware, more awakened, then we can pass that differently to children. So everything changes with one generation.
And Geet, in your experience, I'm sure you've had a variety of clients who come to you with different, very different problem statements. Do you think a common pattern, or do you find a common breakage point where things, like I'm talking in terms of mental wellness, of course, that is there a particular pattern or a set of habits that people find themselves into, or you notice that pattern amongst your clients, that people who do XYZ mostly end up in a state where they wouldn't want to be from a mental health perspective? So are those things that we can actively avoid as a generation, or just as a population?
So सबसे ज़्यादा तो breaking point comes for people who have been disconnected with their emotions. That is one
Please elaborate.
Common thing. So we have always been trained to be very uncomfortable with our emotions. Okay, especially the uncomfortable emotions, unhappiness, sadness, anger, frustrations, grief. इन सब चीजों से हम बहुत दूर भागते आए हैं. तो eventually,
I want to interrupt and add one more point, I think, which is true, which is that we also run away from uncertainty a lot.
Yeah, so actually ये जो सारे uncomfortable emotions है ना, ये kind of हमें uncertainty की तरफ ही ले जाते हैं, because they're somewhere not in our control. We want everything to be in our control. We want to, जैसे वो video game में we feel we are controlling everything. That's become something that we live in our life as also. कि everything, every factor should be in our control. But that's not how life is. And the sooner we realize this, you will then not need to go through a breakdown. Because that breakdown comes to break this illusion that you have that you are running your life, you are the one who's controlling your life. But inside you, beyond your conscious mind, there are so many parts of you that are creating this whole experience here. So the faster we let go of this illusion that conscious mind मैं ही सब control कर रहा हूँ, उतना easily you'll avoid, जैसे कहते हैं ना मिड लाइफ क्राइसिस, या आजकल तो इवन सूनर क्राइसिस वी आर हैविंग, आइडेंटिटी क्राइसिस, वो सब आप अवॉइड कर सकते हो.
क्वार्टर लाइफ क्राइसिस नाउ.
क्वार्टर लाइफ क्राइसिस. सो ऑल ऑफ दैट इज हैपनिंग बिकॉज that breakdown comes कि you've been living in this illusion, it's time to come out of it now. And जो हम emotions की बात कर रहे हैं ना, that emotions and वो हमें connect करता है अपने खुद से. तो जितना हम इमोशंस के साथ कंफर्टेबल होना सीखेंगे, और ये एक एजुकेशन है जो किसी के पास नहीं है, इसलिए ये सीखना बहुत ज़रूरी है. लाइक एवरी पर्सन नीड्स टू फाइंड सम इमोशनल रेगुलेशन कोर्सेज, सम प्रोसेसेस. जैसे we'll talk about tapping, so that is a great way to understand emotional regulation. तो वो जब आप सीख जाते हो ना, then you can avoid these patterns, then you will be moving through life in a better way than being stuck and suppressed inside.
I think we should definitely double click on tapping now. And I want to understand this from a completely newbie perspective on what tapping is. How does it come into the play of, probably solving my mental health? And how did you land up into it? How did you find it?
या सो टॉक थेरेपी के बारे में तो सबने सुना होता है, ठीक है. काउंसलिंग, टॉक थेरेपी जिसको बोलते हैं, जिसमें आप बात करते हो, ठीक है. सो बहुत जनरेशन से दैट वाज देयर, तो लोग टॉक थेरेपी कर रहे थे. बट देन जैसे हर चीज टेक्नोलॉजी भी, वैसे पीपल नोटिस कि टॉक थेरेपी में बहुत टाइम लगता है. लाइक you're talking for such a long time, सेशंस करते जा रहे हो, बट चेंज आने में टाइम लगता है. सो व्हाट आर द फास्टर वेज, कैसे इस प्रोसेस को हम एक्सपेडाइट कर सकते हैं. तो फिर there was this whole concept of Chinese acupressure, which you must have heard of. So acupressure मतलब जितने हमारी बॉडी में मेरिडियंस हैं, उनके कुछ पॉइंट्स होते हैं जहाँ पे मेरिडियंस इंटरसेक्ट. सो दोज पॉइंट्स आर वेरी पावरफुल, दे क्रिएट अ रिपल इफेक्ट. जब आप उन पॉइंट्स पे टैप करते हो, जैसे एक्यूप्रेशर वहां लगाते हैं, तो दे क्लियर द फ्लो ऑफ एनर्जी इन दोज मेरिडियंस इन आवर बॉडी. सो ये सब करते करते, सो all of this when combined together, so mental health, psychology, neuro-linguistic programming NLP, and Chinese acupressure meridian system, इन सबको combine किया गया. And then these are the points which were found कि जब आप इन पे टैप करते हो और साथ में कुछ बोलते हो अपनी प्रॉब्लम से रिलेटेड, तो सडनली दैट ऑल ऑफ दैट स्टार्ट्स क्रिएटिंग इम्पैक्ट ऑन योर मेंटल हेल्थ. उससे भी क्लियर होना शुरू होता है, आपकी बॉडी में भी यू आर स्टोरिंग इमोशंस, एनर्जी ब्लॉकेजेस, लेजीनेस, प्रोक्रास्टिनेशन. ये सब क्या होता है, यू आर ट्राइंग सो हार्ड विद योर 10 कॉन्शियस माइंड टू क्रिएट अ न्यू हैबिट, बट वो हो नहीं रही है क्योंकि 90% आपका अनकॉन्शियस माइंड में तो ब्लॉकेज है. तो आप चाह के भी कैसे आगे बढ़ जाओगे, समथिंग इज पुलिंग यू बैक, और आप 10% से आगे जाने की कोशिश कर रहे हो, तो कर पाओगे क्या? नहीं कर पाओगे. सो दैट्स व्हाई दीज प्रोसेसेस हेल्प अस इन क्लियरिंग आउट all of that is pulling us back. So that's how tapping came about.
And that's super interesting. I think how do you also, I think this relates to the bit on neuroplasticity as well. Like this tells us that people can change, and if you have certain set of tools which you are aware about, then you can apply those and find this out. But how did you come into tapping? How did you get to know about it? How did you learn even an art which is not publicly very widely available or talked about?
Yeah, so as I told you, my interest had began with, when I was 15, I think I attended Art of Living for Children. Then I was in college when I got into Buddhism, Nichiren Daishonin's Buddhism. I was a very curious child. जब मुझे ये पता चला कि आप अंदर से कुछ बदल के अपनी बाहर की जिंदगी बदल सकते हो, my mind, I was like, fuck, that makes a lot of sense. कि आप यहाँ पे कुछ वायरिंग चेंज कर रहे हो और बाहर का सब कुछ. अभी तक हम क्या कर रहे हैं, बाहर इतना जोर लगा रहे हैं, अरे मुझे अच्छी गर्लफ्रेंड मिल जाए, मुझे अच्छा बॉयफ्रेंड मिल जाए, मैं ऐसे बात करूं. मतलब कितना दिमाग उसमें खर्च होता है कि क्या 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 करूं मैं टू बिकम बेटर. एंड देयर इज अ शॉर्टकट टू इट कि आप अंदर से कुछ बदल के उस पूरे बाहर की चीज को इतना इजीली बदल सकते हो. सो देन दैट पीक माई इंटरेस्ट, एंड देन आई स्टार्टेड नई नई जितनी चीजें हैं. देन आई लर्न अबाउट हिप्नोथेरेपी, clinical hypnotherapy, so that really opened up my mind. Past life therapy, so from that it just began. So every modality, every healing technique that I came across, I just had to learn it, I had to train in it. And firstly I was doing it for myself because I wanted to overcome my problems.
Yeah.
My one thing was I wanted to have a really amazing successful career. Secondly, I wanted to have a good marriage, a good partner, because I used to see unhappy marriages around me growing up, and I felt, this is really important to have. And the third was to be, confident and feel fulfilled in my own self. Money, of course, good money. So these were my goals, and this is what I use as way to create that. So that's when I came across tapping. I think it was by an American association that I came across. So that's where I learned it, and then I started using it, and it was so amazing. The results that you get with tapping are mind blowing. I work with health issues using tapping. Yesterday only I was working with a client who had a frozen shoulder,
Hmm.
and the doctor had told, and it was a sports injury, I think, and the doctor had told him it's not very severe, just go and take painkillers and muscle relaxants. I told him, don't worry about it, we'll just tap on it, you will be fine. And I think we just did one tapping round, and I was like, now go and check how much is it. He's like, oh shit, it's gone.
Wow.
It was just one round, so sometimes it can be that fast. And day before that, somebody had a cervical. And that's like health issues are like this. I mean, you don't have to spend much time. So I think 2 rounds we did, the cervical was gone. And I was like, let's check, thoda to hoga, kuch to hoga, move your neck. Like it's zero, it's gone. That's how crazy it is. And now doctors all over the world are using tapping. So many of my clients are medical doctors who come for health issues. So that's how much tapping has revolutionized. And of course, rest of the things like mental health, relationships, money, career, for everything you can use this.
And when a common man like me hears this, my mind runs and races that can I start doing this and all of my problems will go away. But I'm sure that's not how it works. Can you help me triangulate or understand something that possibly each and every one of us can start in context of tapping that probably helps or makes our life incrementally slightly better? Or is there something that we can learn about it, or do we need to go to a practitioner who's an expert in this field? That's our only way to go.
So tapping, you can start on your own also. And so normally we would say, let's say, what is a issue that you're struggling with? Let's say I am having, I'm feeling very stressed. Let's
Yeah.
take a small example. Like I'm feeling really stressed. My work life is really stressful, and I'm feeling very bothered and unhappy. So we notice on a scale of 0 to 10, let's say, how stressed are you? 10 means I'm very stressed, I'm exhausted, I'm tired. 0 means nothing. So you give a number first. Okay. And then we tap on these points. Okay. And after every tapping round, we're going to go and measure. Okay. Now go and check. You were at a 10, let's say. Now what now? You'll instantly start noticing something has changed. Like, oh, it's less now. And just a few tapping rounds and you're at 0. I mean, it's for you to notice. It's not like somebody else is going to come and measure it for you. You'll say, like, yeah, I'm feeling really good now. My body feels amazing. My mental, I'm feeling so active mentally. It's good. The problem is just not coming to my mind anymore. So it's basically what is happening, like you said, neuroplasticity. So हमारे अंदर जो neural pathways हैं, those are the ones which are creating what we are thinking, creates those neural pathways. Okay, when we tap and we focus on a certain problem that we're having, it starts breaking those neural pathways in our mind. Okay, so our way of thinking of something, it will start changing. And when it changes, so the neural pathway is gone. That's why you can't find that problem now. The pathway is broken. So we force you to go and check. Let's say you had told me, but I'm so stressed. I'm like, no, but you're so stressed. Think about it. Your boss said this to you. You did this. And you'll be like, no, but it doesn't bother me at all now. Because that pathway is broken. So it's very scientific. It's not anything, airy fairy or imaginary. It's simple science.
But see, this is so surprising, right? One of the biggest reasons possibly someone indulges in alcohol or any kind of intoxicant is exactly to get the feeling that you are describing right now, is to get away from my current state of problems and just to get detached for a bit and have a good time, possibly a good evening, or you're on a trip. And if you can get those results without possibly damaging your body to an extent, which you might then have to go to the gym or recover and eat well and do all those things, then everyone would, immediately jump onto this bandwagon.
Absolutely. And people don't know about this. I feel there should be movies made more about this, than movies, showing alcoholism in such great light because, it's so amazing. So meditation also has the same impact, which, the high that you get from drugs or alcohol, which is very short. And that same not same much better high you can get through tapping and meditation. So when I'm meditating and when you're in that state you don't want to come out of it. It's so beautiful. So meditation, I know, is not easy for everyone to it takes some time to get to that state, but tapping gets you there very fast. That's the best part.
And
And think like, for people who want to understand it very scientifically. So when we tap, we activate something called the parasympathetic nervous system. So when parasympathetic nervous system is activated on tapping these points, the body goes into a deep relaxed state. And that again, it lowers our brain waves, and we're able to go into a brainwave state which is much more peaceful, relaxed, and calmer. So that's how all of this works. And alcohol, what it does is it just kind of suppresses your conscious mind, nothing else. you know and
it
plus
makes you absent for a while. That's all it does. Like
it's
it
avoidance.
doesn't, yeah, actually. And it also, I think, on terms of trying to figure out yourself, it possibly takes you further away from yourself. And the end goal that we are ultimately trying to achieve with any intoxicant is possibly, to get the same feeling of me being a person, and then letting me having that detachment from events in my life, and
Yeah.
acknowledging them and acting on them at my will, and not rather than, just by circumstantially I'm being pushed into something or that. Because most of us are just playing catch up in our lives. People are playing catch up in relationships. They, a common situation of a person on this planet for most of the people is that everyone has some relationship issues that they are, kind of not addressing right now, some professional issues, some personal issues, health issues, whatever. And the more you try to run away from them, might feel good in the shorter term, because it makes you feel that the problem maybe is not as big or is not as you know difficult to solve, so that you can put it on to solve it later someday. But I don't think that later ever comes, or that problem ever gets solved on its own. So one thing that I've realized possibly of the last 23 years of my age is that nothing gets solved on its own, right? Like you have to have that intent, and possibly things are not also that difficult. Once you start putting some intent and effort into things start happening also. So the fact that we have so much inertia in trying a new thing is possibly one of the biggest inhibitors of us moving forward.
Absolutely. I think that is what differentiates happy, successful people and people who are, struggling and not able to find what they're looking for is this initiative to try something new with an open mind. That makes all the difference. And I haven't come across anyone who's tried tapping and their life has not changed and tried with an open mind, not like, oh, let's, no, it doesn't work. Like you have to really try with an open mind because it's for your benefit. I mean, nobody is going to care whether you do it or not. You want to make your life good, you do it. I mean, how does it matter to anyone else? It's in your hands. But, for me, it was always like I didn't know how to help. There was nobody else to help. So I had to help myself. So, whatever tool I could find, I would stick to it like, glue, that I will get everything out of this to make my life amazing. And if you have that zeal, that dedication, you will find it. Nothing is, too far for you. And as you mentioned about the thing about, relationships, it's so funny that most of the clients, when they come to me, they could have written in the intake form career issues, this issue, that issue, but in the end it always comes down to relationship issues. Always. That is a very big part of our lives and which we don't talk about much. People are mostly very, especially intimate relationships, आप अंदर आपके इतनी लड़ाइयाँ चल रही हैं, इतना अनरेस्ट चल रहा है, बट बाहर आप दिखा रहे हो कि सब एकदम ठीक है. दैट इज सो कॉमन, एंड दैट इज अंदर से really making you shrink from inside. It is reducing your productivity, it is reducing your mental health, it is reducing your happiness. Sab kuch it takes a toll. So addressing relationship issues is so important.
This reminds me of something that I read, which was, why do it's on the lines of, why do we play sports for an hour? And I love playing football. And sometimes, like earlier also, my mom used to be like, you're tired, next day's your exam, whatever, rest and whatever. And I was like, see, my rest is football, let me go and play 1.5 hours football, I'll be supercharged. And the same thing possibly when applied to you going to an office, or let's say you having a difficult conversation with someone you're in a relationship with, that feels very tiring, even though you're sitting in a AC room, probably with the best coffee, or just the best rugs and everything, but you're still very conflicted. So this conflict, whenever there's an internal conflict between your mind and your body, or what you want to do versus what you are actually doing, that conflict is very energy draining. People go and sit in absolutely comfortable offices for 8-9 hours, and no physical toll, but they come back as if they've climbed the Mount Everest and they're super tired. While 1 hour of badminton, there's 10 times the physical effort that you've put at that time, but because during that 1 hour your body and mind are doing kind of the same thing, you're not pretending to play good badminton. You can only play badminton, whether good or bad, that's for someone else to decide, but you're actually doing that thing. So I think whenever there's a conflict, that always takes energy.
And not just conflict, also, like, if you, let's say at office, you are doing something and making a story about it, that I don't like it, or this, I don't want to do this, that will suddenly exhaust you. You could have the whole day go by, and you're working and everything's fine. So it's the stories we make about what we're doing which is creating this whole concept of exhaustion. मैं थक गई हूँ या थक गया हूँ. And similarly in relationships also, when something is not going the way we want it to, it is in disagreement with us, not in congruence with who I am or my beliefs or my thinking, that's when the whole struggle and the exhaustion begins. It's all in the mind. It's so crazy how if you tweak your mind a little, you can be happy doing something so worse and horrible also. That's how powerful a mind is.
Wow. You've actually blown me away with a lot of stuff that you said, and it's very insightful. And also, I think the fact that I like about how you've presented it is the fact it doesn't feel very complex for a person who probably wants to try something like this. Because sometimes what happens is that, again, what we were talking about earlier, people just get intimidated or overwhelmed by what is required to fix their lives, and they're like, okay, I'll fix it next Saturday. Let me have fun this this weekend.
Yeah, that
Not
is
this weekend.
सो ट्रू. एंड पता है क्या होता है, वो सारी चीजें ना आप जितना उसको रग के नीचे डालते जा रहे हो ना, वो जा नहीं रही हैं, वो एक दिन फटेंगी. और वो आपके रिलेशनशिप्स में ही फटती हैं सबसे ज्यादा. जो आपके सबसे क्लोजेस्ट वंस होंगे ना, वहां पे आप जाके बॉम्ब फोड़ोगे और फिर आप सोचोगे इतना डिस्प्रपोर्शनेट रिएक्शन कहाँ से आ गया, और व्हाई डिड आई डू दिस, आई डिडंट वांट डू दिस. थिंग्स लाइक इनफिडेलिटी एंड not being able to be in relationships or not handling relationships well, and then you wonder, why do I do this, I don't want to. वो जो इतना inner conflict है, वो कहाँ से आ रहा है? There are so many parts of you that you've not processed. There are so many things when they happened, you did not process them, you did not make your completion नहीं हुआ उनके साथ. तो वो पार्ट्स आपको अंदर से अलग अलग डायरेक्शंस में खींच रहे हैं. इसलिए आप रिलेशनशिप्स में कभी इतने वॉलेटाइल एक्ट करोगे, कभी इतने मूडी एक्ट करोगे, कभी यूर इन, कभी यूर आउट. सो ऑल ऑफ दैट कम्स फ्रॉम दोज parts of you that are completely pulling in different directions. That's what I like that. This whole culture of let's say one night stands and not being able to be in relationships, that's actually avoidance of being with yourself. It is avoidance of so many parts of you, uh, that you are not ready to face in your own self. Because being with one person means looking at all your shit. That person जिसके साथ भी आप इंटीमेट होते हो, वो आपकी सारी शिट मिरर करने वाला है एंड वी डोंट वांट दैट. तो वन नाइट स्टैंड करो एंड जस्ट हैव फन एंड देन move off without having to deal with your humanity, your emotions, your uh, parts of you that you've been avoiding. So this is just avoidance culture basically.
Wow. And after talking to you on this, something that strikes my mind is most of these people are the ones who are the most unsatisfied or and lost also in their lives when you sit and talk to them. And possibly there's a correlation, because when you try and avoid your humanity as much as you do, then that comes at a cost, right? You don't feel like a human being. Then you feel lost.
Yeah, you feel disoriented, you feel lost, you feel very hazy, and and it reflects in every area of your life. You don't feel complete anywhere. You're struggling everywhere. You're snappy everywhere. You don't enjoy everything fully. वो joy feel नहीं होता when you talk to such people. वो बाहर बाहर से जो मर्जी कर रहे हैं, but अंदर से खाली हैं. So that shows up in different ways.
Keith, how can, if you were given a chance of, possibly fixing this new upcoming generation of our country, what relationship advice do you think cuts across most of the people that you've come across? And what is something that you would want to correct instantly, that addresses things in relationships, the things that we've talked about in your experience with your clients as well? What is something that I can start doing from today that cuts through all my relationships, not just romantic ones, probably a relationship with I have with my friends, my parents, at office? What is something that I can start doing from today?
So, I mean, not just one thing, but I can share three, four points which I found really helped me in my life. So, one is which I think most of us miss is it's never just one person's fault. It never is. So, it's always both people playing a role. हमें एक आदत है blame करने की कि तुमने ये किया, तुम बदलो, तुम्हारी गलती है, तुम ऐसे करते हो, तुम ऐसे नहीं करते हो, तुम्हें ये करना चाहिए. We are just wasting our lives doing this. सबसे एक चीज अगर हम बंद कर सकते हैं is like taking responsibility of my part in it. rather than first pointing a finger there. अगर दोनों लोग बस ये कर लेना, जब लड़ाई हो रही है या कोई disagreement हो रहा है, just pause for a moment, go and take a break, and both of you think how you have contributed to this disagreement on conflict rather than saying कि उसने क्या गलत किया. सिर्फ अगर इंट्रोस्पेक्शन सेल्फ रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी आ जाएगी, आपका रिलेशनशिप इतना ब्यूटीफुल हो जाएगा ना, क्योंकि आपने अपनी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी. अच्छा, मेरे को भी उस तरीके से नहीं क्रिटिसाइज करना चाहिए था. बहुत आप अपने बारे में तो सोचो, आप दूसरे की सारी गलतियां जानते हो. आप परफेक्ट तो नहीं हो ना. यू आर नॉट गॉड, नोबडी इज. तो जितना मर्जी आप इवॉल्व हो, आप कितने मैच्योर हो, बट आप अपना रोल देखो उसमें कि आपने कैसे कंट्रीब्यूट किया. एंड सिमिलरली अदर पर्सन शुड डू दैट कि अच्छा, मेरे को ये चीज नहीं बोलनी चाहिए थी, ये उससे ट्रिगर होता है ये दूसरा बंदा, आई शुड नॉट हैव सेड दिस. नाउ कम बैक एंड टॉक फ्रॉम दैट पर्सपेक्टिव कि आई थिंक जो मैंने वो बोला मुझे अच्छा नहीं बोलना चाहिए था. एंड नाउ व्हेन यू डू दिस, तो यू आर नाउ बोथ वल्नरेबल, जो हम बहुत अवॉइड करते हैं. हम कूल बनने की कोशिश करते हैं, हम ईगोइस्टिक होते हैं कि मैं क्यों बोलूं कि मेरी गलती है. नाउ कम एंड से फ्रॉम दैट वल्नरेबल स्टेट कि सी दैट थिंग दैट यू सेड मुझे ऐसा फील करवाती है, मुझे ऐसा लगता है आई एम वेरी स्मॉल व्हेन यू से दिस, तो कैन यू नॉट से दिस. नाउ द अदर पर्सन विल ऑल्सो बी ओपन टू लिसनिंग, क्योंकि आप अटैक नहीं कर रहे हो उन पे. नाउ द अदर पर्सन ऑल्सो सेज जब आप ये नहीं करते हो तो मुझे ऐसा महसूस होता है. So that is one simple way of, moving through relationships by taking responsibility for your shit.
That immediately strikes, a chord, at least for me, because, I feel, and I've been guilty of it, that unconsciously it happens. Like you get your guard up and you're just trying to justify whatever you did. And if you look at it objectively, there always comes a point when you realize, the thing that you're probably fighting about is very futile. And, it's an interplay of something from the past, or maybe some biases that you have, or a certain way that you want things, and you're not willing to accept or acknowledge with an open mind or open heart what the other party has to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Across relationships.
Mostly is about ego plays. I can't be wrong. Eventually, it's never about what you were fighting about. It's about who gets the last word, who gets to be right, who gets to have an upper hand. So it's all that. So the moment you realize that and become aware of it, you can just let yourself come down to the ground and speak from that vulnerable state that okay, this is what is going on. And as you said, past, present, future, हम वो stereotypes बना लेते हैं, assumptions बना लेते हैं. This is a second thing that I have really found very valuable for relationship is do not make assumptions, always ask. So हम क्या करते हैं, हम assumption डालते हैं इसने ऐसा किया because ये ऐसा सोचती है मेरे बारे में. So now that's an assumption and that has created, अभी शायद अभी इमिडिएटली लड़ाई नहीं होगी बट ये फ्यूल बन चुका है. अभी धीरे 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 आपकी उस अजम्पशन पे चीजें ऐड होंगी. देखा इसने वो किया क्योंकि ये वो नहीं करती, क्योंकि मेरे बारे में ऐसे सोचती है. अब वो बढ़ता जाएगा एंड देन वन डे ऑन अ स्मॉल थिंग it will burst and then you'll be like what the where did this come from, because you were building an assumption. So always question your assumption. अगर कोई चीज आपको लगी उसने किया आपको अच्छा नहीं लगा, ask कि why did you do this, like where was this coming from, and then listen and you'll be amazed ki it's never what you assume. Never what you assume. So stereotypes really bind us and they are our own stories. The way I look at the world, वो मेरी stories है. दूसरे बंदे की story हमेशा अलग होती है. So never make stories and assumptions.
You, Geet, are astoundingly wise. And I think through this conversation, I actually lost track of time. I didn't realize that we kept on talking for almost an hour. But wow, it seems so simple, right? But certainly, I agree with most of the stuff that you said. I think to even have a view of life or of yourself in a manner which is so patient, which is so understanding of yourself and people around you or the environment around you, is a state that everyone wants to be in. I think that is bottom line we all can agree on. But if it can be achieved through these simple things of just letting go of your personal stereotypes, inhibitions to your ego, and all that, I think then we can at least start moving forward in that right direction, and go from there. I honestly never thought that it was so simple yet so effective.
Yeah. Relationships actually, when you just start applying certain simple things, can be really easy, And I've been married for 8 years, and it takes a lot of work. I mean, you have to constantly upgrade yourself, grow yourself, and allow the other person to grow themselves. And marriage can be so beautiful, which I feel people have really lost hope of that marriages can actually be like being with a best friend and having fun through life, and it can be actually so beautiful. And if you want, we could actually do a small tapping for relationship conflicts, which I think help people listening, because that's such a common issue. लड़ाई करके ही बैठे होते हैं सब.
Yeah, of course. I think that in itself, I think I would love to have you again on the podcast and probably talk more deeper about how tapping can influence these multiple facets of people's life. But definitely this is something that I am going to read more about on, and I'm going to run after you whenever whenever I'm there in Gurgaon, and get in touch and probably learn more about the skill or craft which seems so astoundingly simple, but I've probably never heard about it, and people across the world, or people at least around me, would be mind blown by the results of it.
Oh, there's so many research studies that have happened that EFT tapping works so amazing for PTSD. So versus cognitive behavioral therapy, which is more popular worldwide. So it has been found, I don't remember the exact statistics, but 60-70% higher success rate on the groups that were monitored using tapping versus CBT. Then whether it's for addictions, whether it is for food cravings, food addictions, and grief, any kind of problem, so it is so much superior in results. So and plus so it is easy to work, like I work online as well. So I work with people from India, from outside India. So it's very easy now because of online platforms that you can work and learn these processes so easily.
Awesome. So we all know now who to reach out to. That is Geet Taneja. You have to DM her, and probably will shoot some of her contact information in the YouTube description. Thank you so much, Geet, for coming on the Most Serious podcast. A very simple, a very wise conversation, and I really want to compliment you on this. That you seem like a person who's probably developed that level of patience to first explore such a field, and then to have an open mind and explain it in a manner that the people that you are explaining it to kind of feel welcome to it, and rather not intimidated or overwhelmed by the whole unknown nature of it, uncertain nature of it. So I think that is always something which is very challenging, right? Because whenever you're not doing something that is in the norm, that's not a just another career or just something that everyone does, then you need to develop a lot of patience for you to first master that craft, and also then be okay with people not knowing about it, and still navigating through those stereotypes with the grace that you do. So super grateful for you to coming on the More Serious podcast. We'll definitely have you on for another episode.
Thank you so much. It was lovely being here. Such interesting conversations we had, and thank you so much.
Thanks, Geet. Cheers.